What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we're providing you a state of the market and stock picks for March 31st, 2023. So that sounds like something you're interested in. Consider subscribing, as we do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead in this glorious market. Now, first things first, tomorrow we do have the PCE. That will be out at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Essentially, the PCE is, again, in my opinion, the inflation is still going to be obviously an aspect of what's going on. But again, I think ultimately, right now, since there isn't a lot of data, it could hold a lot of weight tomorrow. But nonetheless, intraday, it should have a pretty big move just because considering, again, we don't have monetary policy, we don't have core inflation for a while. So at this point, the market's just looking for some new info to essentially try to move the market. Again, I think we're still very much trapped until we get some pivotal data, right? Something I've been talking about is the banks have been very quiet. You've had a lot of Fed members come on, and there's talks about if it wasn't for Credit Suisse, that essentially we would have had a 50-point basis move. Nonetheless, that's what we were essentially going to get until we had the bank crisis, SVB. Now, again, something I've talked about, there's a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors that people aren't aware of as far as numbers that are currently like credit swaps and everything else that is essentially holding up the market is happening. And again, it's not, if it's not headline news, it's not going to have any kind of impact to the market. And so again, the fact that everything is eerily quiet is concerning, as something bigger at play could be occurring that one unaware of. Now, that being said, not again trying to fear monger, but again, no news will be considered good news, and so the market will push up. But you again still have to be mindful that there's still a lot going on and a lot of still a very bad situation. Still a lot of people getting laid off. The song and dance at this point, pretty much. So do we continue to raise rates? I think that was a big talk about today as well, is we're going to come in with another 25-point basis move. I mean, we still got till June before the next monetary policy. Like, we still have a couple core inflations to get through. We still have earnings to get through before that even happens. And yet people are talking about the next monetary policy already and what that entails. But I think it's going to be 25 nonetheless. I think there will be emergency rate cuts, rate pauses at some point. But again, we have to wait and see. At this point, we're just kind of waiting and grinding as news is being filtered out. I know even today there was a lot of talks about the bull markets coming back. All this stuff has been said before back in 2008. And then again, I don't know how many times a day I hear strong and resilient. The banks are strong and resilient. If it's really that big of a concern, why you keep repeating yourself, right? Like, there's a largely concern about what's going on behind closed doors. But nonetheless, we wait and we see. Again, a lot of the funds have already been used up. One of the bigger banks today as well. There was news about another bank that went under today, which is interesting. It didn't have as much of an impact, though, with everything going on. Again, it held a lot of crypto-related stuff. The Metropolitan Commercial Bank, MCB. So it held some crypto assets, and so I don't know if they were trying to play it off as it being crypto-related. So anytime there's crypto-related, people try to downplay it and push it off, right? And that's why the impact of Silvergate didn't have a lot of weight either until it was SVB. So again, if it's crypto related, they try to make it crypto related. Again, around this time last week, we had tons of information about the SEC essentially coming out and bringing up policy and a bunch of other current issues with crypto, and especially a lot of the onboarding platforms. And so again, I think right now they're trying to paint that picture that it's cryptos that's the problem. But again, crypto's been strong for the most part at this point. So we're going to have to see how well they continue to try to play this out. Now, obviously, there's a lot going on with BRICS and everything else as well. The oil, they traded, I believe it was oil without using their own currencies without the any kind of dollar influence. Again, the dollar is still very strong. It's going to take a lot to overpower the dollar. Yeah, complete collapse of the dollar, complete collapse of the U.S. economy could have an impact on that, and we won't really know how that will have an impact until if it does actually happen. But as of right now, things are strong and resilient nonetheless, and so we're pushing up. We're getting in earnings mode. The market's not, and this is something big to understand, is the market, as you can see over the past like 3 days, the market's been like flat during the day. It will pop overnight sessions, but aside from that, it doesn't do anything during the day. It doesn't have any great news to be moving up, and it doesn't have any really bad news, any new bad news to essentially sell off. So with that being said, it puts us in the position that we're currently in. So we have to see. Again, I think we're just waiting for the other foot to drop. You have a lot of members coming out talking about that as well, that we're still going into recession. Still tons of people getting laid off. It doesn't change the fact that the interest rates are still very high. Inflation is still very high. So we have to see. We wait and see, and that's the bad thing about this current market. People think that the market is sold off enough. Well, just as of last year, which it has sold off quite a bit. But it can still potentially sell more. But again, not trying to fearmonger. The market, we've been in bad situations before, and somehow we've reversed it and prolonged any kind of potential issues that could have arisen and continued the market going up. So this particular part, it's hard to say because you've actually had bank failures, right? And you still have the Fed tightening, quote unquote, with their rate increases. So the problem is that they are the Fed continue to tighten, so it makes it harder to essentially purchase a home or borrow any kind of money. But on the same token, you also have them backing the banks, so the banks don't go under. So again, we wait and we see what happens. It's still going to get a lot worse. This is the way things are. But we wait and we see. So again, I don't want to dive too much and continue to ramble. Again, we'll see if the PCE has anything going on tomorrow. Again, any news at all at this point will move the market to some extent. We have to see how the overnight session does and then take it from there. SPX, again, general index is just kind of bogged down, not really doing anything. Bitcoin, hard rejection off roughly around the 30K mark. Again, I think it's going to need better news to break this and decouple from everything, if that's the route it wants to go, but we'll see. And then we'll go from there. So Tesla, again, same thing. A lot of the market's looking the same. We're getting a lot of consolidation. So either one, we're going to break up, or two, we're going to break down. It's really just depending on the news that's going on right now. We got a couple good days, no bank news, and the market wants to start pushing and testing upper limits. Tesla even here trying to break over the 200 again, but it's got some pretty hard walls to crush through on the 200 and the 220. So we'll see if that does. Otherwise, it's potentially heading back down to the 185. More than likely, I think we'll just continue to chop until we get some sort of news. Nvidia again needs to really break out. Essentially this 276 has been a really hard wall for it to break. Again, I think a lot of these are running out of steam, and no pullbacks either is just definitely not helping. Again, I keep pointing these out, but it has some huge gaps. It hasn't filled or retested, so eventually this thing will come down. When it comes down, it'll come down fast. But we'll see. Again, nothing's really been fast to the downside. Tech has been been the safe haven for a lot of these different stocks as of right now. So because of a lot of the bank worries. BA again showing strength again. but it still cannot break the 222. Still having a hell of a time trying to break over that. Otherwise, holding roughly around the 190 as this zone here. It's more of a middle tier zone. The thing is with VA, it has a lot of zones that are so close to each other. Like it has a lot of support, so it would really take a lot for this thing to just go straight down and start selling off pretty heavy. And it's shown that, right? It's shown its resilience over the past through this banking stuff. JPM again, just kind of floating as pulled back. Again, I still want this further down, like more towards the like 114 mark. Again, we might have to wait till earnings 2 weeks away. Do we continue to chop until we get earnings? We'll get another core by then as well. So again, if inflation continues to come down a half a point on every earnings, that would be good. But again, we'll have to see. We'll have to see where things go from there. So, but as of right now, banks. JPM can definitely sell off more. GS is something I talked about. It's almost full. It's pretty much fully retraced. So this thing can start getting bullish again. But again, now you're dealing with a crisis. So like the dynamic has changed. So again, the old story that we were talking about 2 weeks ago really isn't the main topic as of right now. We have a banking crisis. And then again, it's just not the same because now not only you do have the Fed fighting inflation, so you can continue to get more rate increases until again they break. And I think after doing that rate increase and having about 2 weeks before about a week and a half before monetary policy, if things would have gotten worse, if they would have had more bank failures within that week and a half, I think they would have paused rates at that point. But again, because the bank break, they couldn't really go 50 because 50 would just absolutely obliterate everybody at one time. But if they can continue to increment 25-point basis moves, then you can slowly test the market, try to bring down inflation, and not destroy tons of banks all at one time. So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to do a controlled explosion, if you will, to try to drive down inflation and potentially take out some banks, right? And to cause more disinflation, right? Because there's still a lot of high demand. Every time we dip, it seems like the demand is there. The demand just isn't going anywhere, which is definitely not a good sign, right? Especially if you're trying to combat inflation, everybody's on the edge, just trying to time a pivot. And so, whatever case it is, the retailers aren't going to push up the market. These huge investment firms and stuff are the ones that have the money to be able to do that. But again, volume has been extremely low. People are very uncertain as well. So with that being said, we wait and we see. April is typically, we're going into April next month. So April is typically a very bullish month nonetheless. So maybe we will get some sort of sediment as long as the banks don't break. You can get a very bullish sediment. And that's the hard thing is what if we do start getting a very bullish setup and then more banks just start breaking out of nowhere because you don't know what's going on right now. Again, they're filtering bank news, even though there's whispers of these credit swaps going on and everything at these extremely high amounts. There's a huge credit swap, but trillions of dollars, I think, happening between JPM and Goldman Sachs. Right. And so you got these huge adjustments that they're trying to make behind closed doors. They're not really behind closed doors, but they're definitely not headline news. And so with that being said, there are issues behind closed doors. And that's the problem is if we get into a bullish cycle and we start pushing up, and then all of a sudden you have that one news article hit, and that's the thing that just gives way. It's like we're waiting for that one other thing to happen for things to crack and fold. And then again, that's what you need is you need a solid event that's going to take everything down. And then from that point, you can actually pivot because then Powell would actually say, okay, well, we need to start laying off rates. But right now we're not getting that. Powell's not going to lay off rates. Obviously, he's still continuing to increase rates. And so that's not helping the current state that we're in. So that being said, I don't want to sound like a broken record. Just kind of going over again, the daily thoughts of what's going on, and trying to explain the market again. No news is good news, and trying to always think that there's always going to be an answer. There won't, right? The market's driven by algos, and they read headline news. Right now, headline news is saying everything's good, it's strong and resilient and sound. So, as many times as they can throw those terms out and make headline news on everything that's coming out, then that will be fine. And then, like I said today, I heard about there's a bunch of different media outlets that were saying that we're back in a new bull market, and you can't say that, right? Like, we're still down, like we're not up, right? Like, even considering last year, like we're not up at all. This is not a bull market. This could be a bounce, could be a bear market bounce. It could be a bull market, but it's not. It's not pushing up. Every time it tries to push up, there's still a ton of sell pressure, and so even looking at the price action, you can see that there is tons of sell pressure. It's not just exploding up, right? If it was risk on, you would see an explosion up. You're not really getting that. You're getting these crazy gap ups overnight, which is interesting. But again, you're coming towards the end of the month, so there must be some additional sell pressure tomorrow. But we'll see. And you're coming into the 4,100. The 4,100 is a pretty solid wall. So we'll see what happens from there. And maybe we continue to go up, maybe we don't. But ultimately, you're not going to get huge risk on until people know what's going on. And we just haven't gotten that. And so this is why we've had chop for so long, because we don't know which direction we're going. And you have to try to be adjustable to both sides. But again, in my opinion, to be adjustable for both sides, you need this bad event, this cycle, this natural cycle to play out. And once the natural cycle plays out, then you can continue to normal cycles, and you have normal up and down cycles throughout the year, and those kind of cycles, not these bigger cycles that occur every decade, right? And that's currently what we're going through, right? We went over a decade of just up, and so that's all people expect is just up, and that's not going to just happen, right? So whether being, especially over the past couple of years, the printing of the 40% of the money supply. So with all that being said, we will see. We wake up to news and we go from there. So again, don't want to make these too long. Don't really have a lot of new information, just more discussing my thought process. Again, this is why I created this channel, is to more discuss my thought process and what's happening behind the scene, and then take it into the next day and go from there. So with that being said, go ahead and drop a like and comment what you believe, your thesis, thoughts, and ideas about the day and what you think is coming forward. Is tomorrow going to be a big day with PCE? What are you looking at for the next event that's going to start really moving the market? So with that being said, I will see you guys in the next one.